It's great to see you all here today. Larry, thank you so much for putting this on. This is exciting work. We have a big job to do. Now, Eric Metaxas came up to me this morning and told me I only had 25 minutes. And I'm just saying, Eric, I didn't know you were such a misogynist.
Feel free to take 20.
Oh, thank you. But I look at the clock and it looks like I've got 2 hours, so buckle up, everybody. I did 3 hours of radio every day for 4 years. I'm into this. I don't know if you saw, but recently John Voight did a segment on Tucker where he admitted that God spoke to him. That was amazing. Have you ever had God speak to you? By the way, this is a bit of a Q&A. I'm asking the questions. Feel free to answer. Show of hands. I think Eric asked if anybody had experienced miracles, and God speaking to you or other miracles would count. Show of hands. Who's experienced that? Yeah. It's interesting that the secular world has no knowledge of that, really. And so when it happens to them, they call it coincidence, right? Serendipity. I am recognizing it more and more. When I was a little girl, we had a book called The Castle Number 9. Who knows that book? It was written by Bemelmans. Bemelmans wrote the Madeline series. And this book was not hugely acclaimed. It's also not a terribly good book, but it tells the story of a valet that goes to work in Castle Number 9. And the owner of the castle is a very proper gentleman who says, you know, words don't make sense. Why do we call a dog a dog? My dog comes to see me, and he's happy. And his tail shows that he's happy, and his mouth shows that he's happy because he licks me. And I'm going to call my dog Happy on Both Ends. That will be the new name for the dog. The cat, however, has a different personality. We'll call the cat Claws High. And, you know, candle is meaningless. Really, a candle, when it's lit, is a drop of the sun. So we'll call the candle Sun Drops. And then I'm just fast forwarding. The castle catches on fire. And the valet, who has been fully indoctrinated in this new language, runs down to the pompier. And he says, Happy on Both Ends was chasing high claws high, and sun drops fell. And I skipped one. The fire in the fireplace was, I can't remember, pure joy. And so now the castle is pure joy because it's on fire, right? But he didn't say that, and so it took so long to get the message across that the castle burned down. Now, that was a book that I had when I was a young girl. We didn't have a lot of books, but we really loved books, and I had an original copy of that book. I thought I'd lost it. I went online to try to find it. It's $125 today. I found my copy. But it's odd because I only saved a couple of things from my childhood, and that's one of them. And I just realized the other day that is exactly like the book that I wrote recently called Words for Warriors, in which I talk about how the left has taken our language, perverted it, and now is trying to force us to use the lies that they have created. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Words are powerful. Matthew 18:20, for where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am among them. In my name, in the word, right? In fact, Hebrews 4:12, for the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, able, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. Words have power. God spoke and created everything. Words have power. Words are thought. Words are your ability to think. When they take your words from you, you literally cannot think them. That is the story that George Orwell tells. So they've redefined the word bigot. Did you know this? Last year, the Oxford Dictionary redefined the word bigot. If you prefer chicken to fish, you're a bigot now. That way they can call anybody a bigot. They redefined the scientific method. We're seeing repercussions of that today. They've redefined the word hate. Have you noticed that the people who call out the haters are very hateful? They've redefined the word fascism. That's really what prompted me to write this book. If you look up fascism on Google, they define it as a right-wing ideology. There is absolutely nothing right-wing about fascism. It is very left-wing. It has everything in common with the left. The same color scheme, the same artwork, the same tactics of bullying and intimidation and violence. Why? Why would they take the word fascism and change it like that? Does anybody know? Does anybody have an answer? Speak it out. When you own the language, you own the debate. But specifically fascism, does anybody know why they took fascism? Well, that way they can say, there's violence on both ends of the spectrum. There is not violence on both ends of the spectrum. There is only left-wing violence, and we should not be intimidated into admitting that we are guilty of some violence that we never perpetrated because we don't believe in violence. But they do. And I want to make it clear to you today, this is not the a-religionists or the irreligionists against religion. This is a conflict of two religions. Because the devil's greatest trick was to convince the world that he didn't exist, right? And the atheist's greatest trick is to convince the world that they don't believe in God. Oh, they believe in God. Oh, they very much believe in God. They believe they are God. And that's why you're not allowed to go to church. But you can worship Baal at a Planned Parenthood clinic. You can go to the strip joint because those are essential. But you can't go to church and worship the one true God because they know. That's what makes this fun, is they know. They hate God because they want to be God. And so now self-mutilation is now self-love, right? Did you know that proficient, for those of you who have kids in the school system, and I mean, and I'm sorry to do this, but it is the entire education system at this point, because you don't know that your little Christian school is not woke. I'm sorry. I wish I could be nicer, because honestly, I don't need to make more enemies. I have plenty. But schools are woke. So I was in a conversation the other day with a gal, and she was saying how her school was so proud that they had hired a new black pastor. And she went to them and said, excuse me, why the modifier? Why black pastor? Like, shouldn't we just be happy that we have a new pastor and not focus on color? And she got a lot of pushback. And of course, the black pastor that they hired was fully woke and teaching CRT, which meant that her daughter should hate her because she was an oppressor. She'd married a black man, by the way. She marched down to that school. She said, you know, you're teaching my daughter that I'm the oppressor. If anybody oppresses her, it's her black father who ran out on her when she was 2 years old. But it didn't change the school. And her daughter still goes to school. And she doesn't know what to do. What are we supposed to do? We have to go to school, right? Wrong. So, as privy to this conversation, I had a friend who has a national platform. He's quite well known. And he was a little bit condescending and, well, Sam's solution for everything is just pull your kids out of school. And, my daughter went to the National Cathedral School. There's a school that's attached to the National Cathedral. By the way, if you think this isn't a Christian nation, then explain to me the National Cathedral. We don't have the National Mosque yet. And his daughter went to school there. And he marched down there to talk to them about, 1619 or critical race or whatever it was. And he got the school's dean back on her heels. And he said, well, so you're not teaching that. So what about objective truth? And she said, we don't teach objective truth. And I said, wow, so you pulled your daughter out of school, right? And he said, no, she only had 2 more years. And I said, oh, forgive me. Now he's on the front lines. He's got a platform. He did not pull his daughter out of school. I said, oh, but you're still fighting it, right? He said, no, I don't fight for other people's children. I fight for other people's children. I fight for them all. Because they are all God's children. And what we are doing in our schools today is nothing short of child abuse. They've redefined the word education. And I would put to you folks, and my job today is to try to bring you a message that's very hard. You don't know what education is. I'm sorry to say. So let's do a quick test. How do you define good education? Anybody, shout out, what defines a good education? What does that mean? And then what? No, it's true. That's right. That's a good education. They get into a good college. To what end? Why? Good job. Why? Money. A good education means money. A good education means my son is set up for life. Good job, money. So let me ask you, Christians, is that the end result that you're hoping for your children of God, is a good job, a lucrative career? Correct. So the word education it's from the Latin, and it means to lead out. Thank you, yes. And so what we are accomplishing today is not education, it's schooling, which is a completely different thing. A lot of people like to say it's indoctrination, and it is, but that's so overused that I don't typically say, I just say it's schooling. You've been schooled. If you think that you can't educate your child, if you think that you can't lead your child into knowledge, you've been schooled. You haven't been educated. In fact, the mark of a good education is the ability to teach it. And so when parents come to me and say, oh, I can't teach my kids, I go, well, then you're not educated. But I am. I have a diploma. Meaningless if you can't teach it. But I am. I went to a good school and I graduated college. And you can't teach? What good is it? That is not the mark of actually a good education as education is originally intended. In fact, education used to be teaching the discernment of truth, beauty, and goodness. What is truth, beauty, and goodness? What is it? Knowledge of God. Education used to be to teach children to find God, because they should be on a search for God. And your role as the parent is to represent God to them as best you can until they discover God for themselves. It's that simple. And the rest of that bull crap that they put on the kids in school is just that. And so if you want your kids to grow up with a confused mind, send them into an institution that just shovels a bunch of manure on them every day. Now, I'm not dissing math. I happen to be a mathematician. I love math. And it pains me that my youngest daughter she's not a mathematician. And I'll tell you a quick story. She's an artist, and I am not. I am distinctly not an artist in terms of drawing and painting and stuff. And when she was about 10, I hit my knees. I was home educating them, and my oldest wanted to be an actor. I'm like, well, I can manage that, and he should be a writer, and I can manage that. And I was leading them, right? And my second child's totally an engineer. He's a mini-me. We understand each other. We don't even need to speak. Like we get each other. And then my third one was like, oh, Lord, what am I supposed to do with this? I hit my knees. I said, I don't know how to teach this. I can't teach it. I don't know how. And so I just started reaching out to people. My sister is an artist, somewhat of an artist, and so I was talking to her, and she said, well, you know, one of the things that good artists do is they study human anatomy because, you know, if they want to draw the human form, they need to know how it works and what's underneath and stuff. And I said, oh, okay, that's a good idea. Like, I had some marching orders, like, okay, now I know what to do. And I went up to Tavy's bedroom. She was 10 or 11 years old, and I said, hey, your aunt said we should get you some anatomy classes. What do you think? Can I sign you up for some, like an anatomy class? Should I do that? She said, oh, Mom. And she pulls out her notebook. She opens her notebook, double-page spread of the interior workings of the human knee. Because years before, I had had the presence of mind to say to her, if you like art, you should set aside a half hour a day to do art. And so she set aside about 3.5 hours a day to do art. And so she'd done some research, and she knew what she needed to learn, and she taught herself, which is why I am rebranding home education, and we are going to call it from now on self-teaching. And the reason that we're calling it self-teaching is twofold. Because the parent is not the teacher in the sense that the teacher has all the answers. That is not what we want to emulate. We do not want our children to think that somebody else has all the answers for them. We want our children to think, full stop. We want them to think of the answers for themselves. Sure, they can do research and they can find some answers, but we want to create thinkers because that is how we discover. If you're a socialist, socialism says, hey, status quo is great. The Obamacare said, hey, status quo is great. We don't need any more research because the only way we get research is through the capitalistic ideology of competition. If you come up with a great new idea, you'll be remunerated. Socialists say, no, we don't need any more ideas. You just do your job. And that's what we've done to education. Am I making sense? So now, instead of teaching truth, beauty, and goodness, we teach that conformity is survival. We don't teach objective truth, right? We teach the opposite. There is no truth. We don't teach objective beauty. And boy, anybody who's been to a waterfall, Larry, you stand at a waterfall, you see the water cascading over, you are filled with awe, yes? And the guy next to you says, oh, that's nothing. And what do you think in your head? Something wrong with that guy, because this is awesome, right? Beauty exists, folks. There is something that we know is objectively beautiful, but the culture, and by the way, this is all communism, and if you don't know the Communist 45, please do your research. The culture is telling us that there is no such thing as absolute beauty. There is no such thing. All evidence to the contrary because we all identify it. And yet, here we are, coming into this hotel, you see two sculptures out front. What the crap are they? Did you notice them? They're absolutely absurd, but they spend a lot of money. I guarantee you they spend a lot of money on them. That's communism. When you see it, I want you to start calling it out. I was at the DFW airport on the way here, and they have a play area for the kids. I put this up on locals.com and Instagram and Facebook. I did a video of it. And it is basically it's a deconstructed castle. So it's a castle that's all metal, but it's like this way and that way and this way and that way, and it's all messed up for children to play in. That's child abuse. Why would you subject a child to that? Much less why would you subject me to it? I don't want to see that. Do I purposely go to downtown Detroit to see what the communists have done there? No! Nobody wants to see that destruction. And yet that's what they're filling our culture with today. And we have to stand up and say, not only do I not get what that is, that's but ugly. All right, so we're teaching the opposite of truth, beauty, and goodness. How is that education? We're leading children away from God. When they took the Bible out of schools, they didn't get rid of religion, folks. They replaced it. They replaced Christianity with their own religion, and now they have a bunch of acolytes out there. And now those people have gone through the system, and now they're teaching our kids. So it's the opposite of education. Do you know where Dr. Seuss came from? Do we have Dr. Seuss fans in here? Anybody love Dr. Seuss? Do you know where Dr. Seuss came from? I'm sorry, I'm gonna destroy your world right now. What's that? Oh yeah, sadly, that's also where my husband comes from. What good comes out of St. Paul? Kidding. Dr. Seuss was a writer. He has written a few good books. I hated Dr. Seuss growing up, and I never knew why. It's fascinating how God put me on this path when I was very young. I disliked him, the cat in the hat. Yet I don't eat green eggs and ham, or whatever. And it rhymes, and it makes no sense, barely any sense, right? So they decided way back when that they weren't selling enough books to schools, and they needed to find an excuse to sell more books. So they decided to put in whole word reading. Whole word reading limits the child in the number of words he can read because he only reads the whole word and he doesn't understand phonics. He will never be able to sound out a word. Therefore, his vocabulary will never grow. Understood? And so they went to Dr. Seuss and they said, we need some books with these words because these are the whole words that we're going to teach the kids. And he said, well, that's gibberish. I can't make any sense of that. But if it rhymes, then hopefully it'll sell. And that's how we got Dr. Seuss. And they stifled an entire generation of children with absolutely no research done to see if whole word reading maybe would improve reading. They just claimed it, which is exactly what they did with Common Core. They just claimed that it would raise test scores, which, by the way, it hasn't. It's lowered them. For billions of dollars, your dollars. Why are you not angry? Why are you not outraged? You know, I love these parents, and they go to the school boards. God bless them. This is wonderful. They're going to the school boards, and you better behave now. You better not teach CRT. And yet the teachers are saying, they can tell me not to teach it, but I'm going to teach it anyway. Because I'm an ideologue, and that's what I believe. And my job is to enlighten these young children about how racist they are. We cannot allow children to go into these institutions. And I remember I was at church one day, and a gal came up. She said, "You're that homeschool gal, right?" I said, "Yep." She dragged me by the wrist over to her husband, great big burly guy. And this was years ago, so I hadn't become quite so outspoken as I am now. And he said, "Oh yeah, so you're a homeschooler, so why? Like, just give me the short version in, five words." And I'm like, he's intimidating too. And I swear to God, the Holy Spirit just spoke through me. I said, "Well, I don't believe my children belong in an institution, do you?" Why do we think that children belong in school? I'll tell you why. You've been schooled. That's why. The way you think about education is entirely wrong because you learned what you learned in school. Does that make sense? It's going to be hard. It is difficult to step out of the paradigm. I was steeped in it. I always believed college was the way. It wasn't whether college, it was always what college. Now it's why college. Why? Why college? You can teach yourself anything you want to know. You've got the internet, you've got YouTube. You want to fix a toilet? Go on YouTube. Google it. No, but seriously. You want to learn rocket science? YouTube. You want to learn math? Khan Academy. You can teach yourself anything. So my job, as I've seen it, is to empower parents to home educate, self-teach. The reason we're calling it self-teaching is because the parent is not the teacher. The parent is the lead learner, the leader. The parent is the guide. The child then, and by the way, that takes the onus off the parent because the parents are all scared. Oh, I don't know what to teach. I don't have a degree in teaching. Thank goodness you don't have a degree in teaching. Like I've talked to parents who are teachers and they're like, yeah, I'm thinking I might want to homeschool my kids. And I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Kidding, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Mostly. We're so stuck in the paradigm of school that we miss the valley because we're stuck in the forest. And so in our schools today, they're teaching the lies. They're teaching white privilege. They're teaching CRT. By the way, as a young girl, I identified as an American Indian. I used to tell people that I was part Indian because I had dark skin. And so I was, did you know this, Jordan? My sister's here with me. So I would just tell people that I was part Indian. And then I grew up. And that's what we should be saying to the left when they say, well, I identify. Grow up. They're children. They're children. Why are they children? Anybody? Because we don't have a school crisis. We actually have a parenting crisis. And it's not just because God is not reigning in people's lives. You know, we say, oh, we have a fatherhood crisis because there are a lot of families that are without fathers. But what happened was the public schools came along and said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of your kids all day. You guys go to work and don't worry about it. And the parents came home and they would parent a little bit. But the children grew up with the school as the parent, as the school is mainly the parent, because the big influence on the children was the school. And the parents stopped disciplining the kids because, who can take it? I mean, I work all day, and then I come home, and you know what? Just go to your room. I can't deal with you right now. And tomorrow I'm going to drop you back off at school, so this is not a problem that I have to deal with right now. And the parents stopped parenting. And then what happened in the churches, Tom? What happened in the churches? The churches said, let's start a Sunday school program for these kids who are so unruly in church because the parents don't know how to discipline them. And so the parents send their kids off to Sunday school. And they have no idea what's happening in the Sunday school. There was a Sunday school teacher who taught for 30 years. She said not once did a parent come in and say, what did you teach today? And they throw on VeggieTales, which, I'm sorry, a prophet of God is now a cucumber? Excuse me, what are you doing to the Bible? Stop it. Children should be in church. And if they can't sit still, give them something to do with their hands and train them. Children need to be trained and they need to be parented. And the problem that we have now is we have a parentless generation, and I'm not throwing your parents under the bus, but that's what we're suffering from now. So the parents who come to me and say, I don't know how to teach my child, typically it's not the education stuff. They think it's the education stuff. It's the parenting stuff because they don't know how to parent. Because they weren't effectively parented, because they went to school. And what does school teach? Do you know the main message that school teaches? Schools teach that you can't. Schools teach that you can't. I'm going to say that one more time because I really want this to sink in. You learned in school that you can't unless someone else said that you could. Unless you got that grade, passed that test, did that thing, got that gold star, you can't. And that's why parents say, I can't homeschool my kids because I'm not a teacher. I can't, whatever. All evidence to the contrary. Who taught you how to lease a car? Who taught you how to rent an apartment? Right? You can learn anything. You just have to decide to learn it. Schools lock your brain in a box and tell you you can't even open it. And then, of course, we have all the crap that's coming down to our kids in school. I won't go into that. Tom did an excellent job. Just take everything that Tom said, double it, put it inside the school system. It's tremendous. Pornography in the schools. There are pornographic books in the schools. Okay, quick story. This is going back a couple years. I was on the air, and I had a friend reach out and say, hey, you should interview this young woman, 10th grader in a public school in Colorado. I had her father, and their lawyer on the phone. She had been assigned a poem. The poem was an older poem with homosexual, violent, pornographic imagery in the poem. And the publisher was too embarrassed to publish the whole poem, so he published it with ellipses where all the swear words were, 4-letter words. And so the 27-year-old professor stood in front of the class and gave them all the swear words, spelled them out for them so that they could write in all the swear words to get the full effect of the poem. The young girl admitted to me on air that she had felt violated. And I said, well, it's no wonder you were. You should feel violated. That is a perfectly natural feeling because you were. I said, now, tell me something. Oh, they had gone to the school board. You people, you shouldn't be teaching this. I do that because it has no effect. You're raging against the wind. Stop it. Take a stand. My child will not. So they went to the school board, and they insisted on an apology. So they got their, sorry, not sorry letter from the professor, and they insisted that the poem be removed, and it was not. So what do you think they did? Boycott the school? Take their daughter out? Move to a different town? Stage a protest? No, she went back to school. I said, I understand you're back in school. And her father, he said, yes, we're so proud of her. We allowed her to make that decision. She's ministering to an atheist girl. I said, what is she ministering? That Christians lie down because they don't care enough to fight for truth and goodness? Is that what she's teaching this atheist girl? That she's okay with being violated and she wants more of it because she's back in the same classroom with that evil professor? What are we teaching people about who Christians are? Why do you think they can steamroll us? Because they can. I was nicer to them. I got them off the air, and then I did my rage. And my friend actually called me afterwards. He goes, I totally agree with you. I didn't know the full story. And totally. I was like, excuse me, where's the father? Why don't men stand up for their little girls? And by the way, they're little boys. Can I tell you that school is entirely anti-boy? School is entirely anti-boy. You should never make a little boy sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. That's child abuse. Shame on you. Little boys need to be roughhousing. They need to be outside. They need to be exploring. And that brings me to the salt and light argument. And there's a place for salt and light, but it's not inside the schools. I talked to a Christian teacher, and he said, no, we made the choice for our kids to go to school because they're salt and light. I said, oh, cool. So you're going to sacrifice your children. You're just going to sacrifice them. Because children are not leaders. Children are children, and they need to be led. Parents are leaders. Great, you're a Christian teacher. You go to school. Why would you sacrifice your children? Your children get poured into. You know, people, like the other argument is, well, what about socialization? Well, what about it? I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about education. Now you've changed the subject. Why do you do that? Because you were never taught to argue properly. Which, by the way, teach your children how to debate. We need debaters. We need young people to contest for the faith. We need to expose them to apologetics. And if you're no good at apologetics, brush up. Because your kids need to know apologetics. They need to know the reason that they have the faith that they have. And boy, when you turn them loose with that, oh, they get so smart. It's fun because they know so much, and yet they don't know everything. And so they know a lot, and then you trip them up, and they're like, and they got to go look it up and do more research. It's fun. It's fun parenting and self-teaching your kids. It's a tremendous joy. There's a lot that goes into it. By the way, Tom, I think you said, how do you define CRT, right? I have one for you. This is Dave Rubin. On Twitter, somebody said, I bet, conservatives can't even define critical race theory. And he tweeted back, shut up, Whitey. There, I did it. We need to be pouring into people. I started a book club, and one of the gals came, and she's a wonderful woman, and she has 3 adopted children from various countries, all of whom are colored. And she said, well, I believe in Black Lives Matter. I think that it's a good thing. And so we educated her lovingly. You can educate people. And you can speak kindly to people and teach them. She wasn't one of these vigilant, ideologues. She just thought Black lives should matter, and they should, even in the womb. Which brings me to a documentary that I just produced called Leaders for Life, and I have a few out there for a donation if you would like it. It's a pro-life documentary. It answers the question, how do we save a nation? Because you can't save a nation that doesn't value life, because if it doesn't value life, there's nothing to save. And so the conclusion here is that children don't belong in institutions. But I'm not done yet. I just wanted to conclude that section. Schools are anti-God. They're teaching lies. They're human trafficking centers. They are grooming children. There is no reason a second grader should know the word lubrication. That is wrong. That is evil. That is sinful. And the sooner that we admit to ourselves that schools are not in the business of educating, they are not in the business. Now, some teachers are. I don't throw teachers under the bus because there are some good teachers, there are some bad teachers. But the system is not in the business of education. And then, finally, there's this. If they feed it to you for free, what value does it have? By the way, show of hands, how many people here were happy that when they were out of school? We're like, oh, school's done. Right? What did schools teach you? To hate education. It's hard. It's not hard. Do you know every child is born curious? Why would God do that? Why would God make children curious? Because he wants to be discovered. But when you teach people that God doesn't exist, when you teach young children that there is no God, there is no truth, there is no beauty, there is no goodness, why are they learning anything? They're learning rote numbers, letters, whole words, Common Core, CRT, 1619 Project. It's all garbage. Of course they hate learning. Of course they drop out. Dropout in California is like 56%. I'm going to misquote this. But it starts at grade 5. And then they go on a search, and they find leadership in a gang. because they're searching for God. These children are harmed and they're hurting, and we need to be doing something to rescue them, to save them. But we're not allowed to talk about it because it has morality in it. You know, Dennis Prager visited Angola prison. Angola prison was the #1 murder prison in the United States. Highest rate of murder. And they instituted a Bible study. They dropped the murder rate down to... And Dennis Prager toured it, and somebody asked him on the way out, well, what'd you think? And he said, I'm angry. And they said, what? But it's got such a great success rate. He said, you know what? You got the cure to cancer, but because it has a moral component, you refuse to address it in the culture. How many of those young children, young people, who were in the riots last summer believe in God? How many of them came from the churches? Well, actually, nowadays, you don't know because, I went to a church last summer with my kids. I thought, this is awesome. Worship was great big church, 35 church plant church. And the pastor came on and said, hey, everybody, you need to go apologize to black people. He took time out from his vacation to tell us to apologize to black people. My apologies to the black person sitting in the audience there, by the way. I'm kidding. Okay. Edgerton was a professor of engineering at MIT, and he said this: the trick to education is to teach people in such a way that they don't realize they're learning until it's too late. Math is not racist, even though they're trying to tell us that it is. Well, I can't wait to drive over a Common Core bridge. You first. The home environment can undo a lot you try to do at school. That's why we've lowered the kindergarten age year after year until now we're almost snatching them from the cradle. Anybody know where that came from? Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. So I want to talk briefly about what homeschooling teaches the parent, because I want you guys to be blessed. I want you to homeschool other people's children. I want you to breathe into the culture. I want to mobilize you. I have 3 teenagers, 19, 17, and 15. They are highly intelligent. They are highly devoted to the Word. And on several occasions, individually, sometimes I go to bed early, and I sit in my bed and I do work or I read. And on several occasions, individually, they will come into my bedroom when my husband's traveling and sit down on the edge of my bed and just pour out. And I can be impatient. I could say, you know what, I'm really busy. I'm reading this script. I got to get this done. I'm working on the show for tomorrow, whatever. And I never do, because those are the precious moments. And that's building relationship. And I want you guys to be blessed with the relationships that you can build with your children or your grandchildren that way. I had somebody reach out and say, their grandson visited them every weekend, and they didn't know what to do with him because he really loved playing that one game, that one video game, whatever it was. I didn't even recognize it. That's how out of touch I am. But he did like to take the walk around the lake, and so they did that, but then he just wanted to be on his game. And what could they teach him? What kind of curriculum could they buy? Curriculum is not the Holy Grail. Can I just say that? So I'm doing a show on Epic TV, and I'm talking about all of this, and I'm trying to empower parents to rethink what education should look like for their children, rethink the enabling their children, rethink that, right? And he said, what kind of curriculum? We heard about this Christian curriculum, maybe this would be good. And I wrote him back and I said, I don't think the little boy wants to come to your house to do school, first of all. Why would you do that to him? And by the way, homework, what the heck is that? My plumber comes to my house and fixes the pipes. He doesn't leave me a couple extra pipes to screw in myself. Why is there homework? And so I said, if he likes cars, get a motor to build with him. Build a motor. If he likes rockets, go online and look up rocketry and go to the hobby store and get a rocket to build and blast off. If he likes baking, bake with him. Find something really cool to bake. And the guy wrote me back. He said, oh my gosh, that never occurred to me. That's parenting. And then you'll have that relationship with your child that you won't get otherwise. I remember the school wasn't getting it done for my kid, my oldest. He was in second grade, and it was an abysmal year. And I said to Kevin, towards the end of the year, I said, this just isn't happening. By the way, the school made me the substitute teacher, which I did not appreciate, and gave me, like, the crap work to do with my son. So the first time he looked at it, he said, but Mommy, we don't have to do this in class. And I went, oh, really? So she's giving me the stuff that she doesn't even make the kids do. So now I'm the bad guy. Well, thank you. I've had enough of that, right? So I said to Kevin, I think maybe we should homeschool. And he said, well, what about the Christian school? And I said, well, I think that one's $35,000 a year. He goes, let's try homeschooling. He's a clever man. And so I brought him home. And that was my and I was nervous. My sister brought it up to me this morning. She said, remember how nervous you were? I was terrified because I had all these ideas of education that were so terribly, terribly wrong. We have ideas of education that are completely incorrect because we've been schooled and not educated. We have ideas about sacrifice that are completely incorrect. I do interviews and people say, you know who my husband is, right? No? Okay. My husband did a movie called God's Not Dead, which was a $2 million movie, and it made $140 million worldwide because it told... because it shared the gospel. People needed to hear the gospel because God is not dead. And in the process, he exposed himself as a conservative Christian in Hollywood. And so I think it's safe to say he lost a lot of business, a lot. And there's a whole other story there because he also had 3 strokes at the peak of his career. And I like to say that God tapped him on the shoulder. And so we do interviews, and people say, you sacrifice so much. And I say, no. No, I didn't make the sacrifice. The people out there who are compromising their values and their morals and their beliefs to get along, those are the people who are making the sacrifice. The people sending their children to school are sacrificing. They don't even know what. They don't know what they're missing out on. That's why I told you the story of my teens, each of them individually at different times, just coming because we have that. And they want me to know, and they want to show me what's happening in their lives. We have that. People who send their kids to school have sacrificed that, and they don't even know. For what? The almighty dollar? When I first started homeschooling, and my husband traveled a lot, and we would travel with him if he was gone for more than... We had a rule in our family when we first got married. We would never be separated for more than 2 weeks at a time. That was our rule. And I stuck to it. And so I would travel with him. When the kids came along, we just packed up the kids and traveled with them. You can teach your children how to behave and how to travel with you and make it enjoyable. You can absolutely do that. Sometimes it involves candy. I'm just saying. It is perfectly okay to bribe your children, to manipulate them, and also, by the way, to shame them. Shame is a highly effective tool. As we know, God uses it. Adam and Eve were unashamed until they sinned. Sin brings shame, and we should be shaming people. And I shame the person who created that piece of crap architecture for kids to play in. I shame, and he realized very quickly that he got to see his kids a whole lot. We put a table in his office, and they would just come in his office and color while he was working. And then they'd go, "Look, Daddy." You give that up when you pass your kids off to somebody else. You know, children are a gift from God. Children are a gift from God. If I give you a gift, are you going to give it to her to open? It's for you. You're going to give it to her? No. They're a gift. You stick around, open it. Find out what's inside. All right. I think I probably should sum it up here. So we live in a culture of lies. They've taken our words, they've perverted our words, and now they're asking you to lie. You must call that man a woman. I want you to say, but that's a lie. Very simply, I want you to say that. But that's a lie. I can't do that. That's a lie. No, it's the truth. No. You will be attacked. But you need to be the fixed point. You need to make a pact with yourselves, each of you individually, that you will be the fixed point and not sacrifice your morals and your values. I want to encourage you to play a game with yourself. If any of you came from out of town, when you go to the airport, don't put your mask on. Make the assumption, perfectly fair to make the assumption, oh, they haven't gotten around to taking down the signs yet. I think that to myself as I walk in. Oh, they just haven't gotten around to taking down the signs yet. And then you make the decision. So when I flew here, and I checked in my bag. She didn't ask. Okay. I got to TSA. They didn't ask. I stood in front of TSA. I handed her my ID and my ticket. And she's looking down, doing it. She said, pull your mask down, please. Pull your mask down, please. Pull your mask down. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Here you go. Didn't ask me to put it on. The security person at the little conveyor belt asked me to put it on, so I put it on, because I knew I'd have to put it on. But play a game. How long can you go before somebody asks you to put it on? Because you have to understand, half the people don't believe it. Half the people don't want it. I was in the store the other day. Have you seen the masks that are like all mesh? They're all like sparkly mesh. And a gal was wearing it, and she was doing something, and I complimented whatever she was doing. I can't remember. So I just engaged her just for fun. And then I noticed her mask. I said, and by the way, I wasn't wearing one because I don't. And I said, why are you even bothering? I mean, everybody can tell you don't believe that the mask, we know what that is. We know it. So take it off. She was like, oh, well, I don't know. Take it off. 2 Timothy 1:7. Anybody? For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and what? Sound mind. I know you've all been schooled, but it's still there. It's still working a little bit. Turn it on. Use it. We can beat them. Because why? Because we have the truth on our side. And nothing can stand against the truth. And what is the truth? Jesus Christ. This isn't wordplay. There's a reason that it works this way. There's a reason that the Bible says in the beginning was the Word. There's a reason for that. All we have to do is connect the dots. What did Jesus say when Pilate asked him, why did you come? What did Jesus say? Tom, you probably know this, right? To bear witness to the truth. That's our fixed point. We are here to bear witness to the truth. He didn't say, I came to open a can of whoop-ass on the Pharisees. I came to overturn tables. I came to heal people. He could have said all those things. I came to heal the world. He didn't say he came to bring peace. He said the opposite. But he did say, I came to bear witness to the truth, and that's what we're called to do. And so we have to stand for the truth. Start a book club. Start a book club, start with the Constitution. Has anybody read The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis? It's absolute brilliance. Start a book club, read it together. It's 3 short things. You just read the first one, have a little conversation with people, invite them to your house. Support films, support the culture that you want. If you subsidize it, you will have more of it. And that goes the other way too. Get off Netflix. Get out of Starbucks. Did you know that apparently over 90% of our banks support Planned Parenthood? Did you know that? I just learned that the other day. I'm like, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to do something because I don't support Planned Parenthood. I do want to say that our schools, the way you know that they're not engaged in education, and the way that you know that they are anti-you and your child and freedom, I mean, there are lots of ways, but one way is they don't teach civics. You know what civics is? In the United States, our civics say that we have the power. The power resides with the people. Government school's not going to teach civics because the government doesn't want you to know that you have the power. I'm here to tell you, you have the power. You have a great deal of power. People often say, well, what's my call to action? What should we do, Sam? And that's great. I get it because I've stepped out boldly and I am a leader. But the only reason you're asking that question is because you went to school and you learned follow the leader. Stop following the leader. Be one. You can be a leader. You can be the fixed point. You can stand for truth. So I want you to share these ideas. I want you to start a small group, start a book club, study these ideas. I will say, please subscribe to the Babylon Bee. You must, I don't know if you heard, but apparently Joe Biden has decided that he will buy all of Hunter's artworks because he wants to meet the president. What's that? Yes, yeah, no kidding. Just say that word doesn't mean what you think it means. Just say that. Get a copy of my book and buy one for your friend. I also have these 2. I did a devotional for parents. This is virtue. We want to teach our children virtue, and we're not doing it in school. Why do you think we're seeing everything, all the unrest that we're seeing, and people who are completely unguided and misguided? And so I wrote a devotional. At first it was for homeschool families, and then I thought, well, actually it should be for school families because those are the kids who really need it. We need to teach our children virtue. We never learned virtue. We got it osmotically. We just sort of absorbed it, right? Why don't we lie? How do you teach a child not to lie? What do you say? Don't lie. Oh, that was bad, right? How's that get the point across? No, you teach a child not to lie. You say to them, because you know you lied, right? Maybe nobody else ever finds out that you lied, but you know, right? So when you face yourself in the mirror, you know you're a liar. And then you can't trust yourself. And my darling, if you can't trust yourself, you can't trust anybody. That's why you don't lie. Because you need to be able to trust yourself. And so that's my summary message for you today. They're trying to make you lie. And if they get you to lie, then you've got nobody left. Not even God. I mean, you do, but do you know what I mean? If you are willing to lie, then you can't trust yourself. And you will know that every time you face yourself in the mirror. And that's a terrible thing. There are some men who prove by their writings that the face of a paper can be made more cutting than its edge. Your words matter. Use them to stand up for the truth. Thank you so much. I'm Sam Sorbo, and I approve this message.